In this video, I'm going to start my next section or module on talking about the notion of ancient ethics. And so here I'm going to start with a discussion of a work by Plato, ancient Greek philosopher who lived about 2,300 years ago. And in here, this is a work called Euthyphro. It's up on Blackboard right now. What I'm going to do here in this video is we're just going to kind of go through the text, and I like looking at this text first in ethics because it's one of the first texts that we can look at really in the history of philosophy, cross-culturally construed, and see an investigation to the question, what's the right thing to do? Now, there are innumerable ancient texts that answer the question, what should you do? What makes this one interesting is it gets at the question, yeah, but why though? And we see the characters actually in this work by Plato. It almost reads like a play that Plato wrote early in his career that describes a conversation between another Greek philosopher, Socrates, and Socrates is waiting outside of court. He's actually waiting to be called for his court case because he has been brought up on charges of blasphemy for going around asking people questions, philosophical questions. Why do you think this is true? Why do you think that? And you can read more in Plato's Apology to see why that's happening. But what I want to do here is I want to focus on a conversation that Socrates has with someone else that walks up, also going to court, named Euthyphro. So I'm going to work through that text, and I want you to see how the conversation goes. We won't be going through every line, but I want you to pay attention to how this goes and what this has to do with the struggle of trying to figure out what right, what good, what justice, in this case, what tohosion, or what piety is. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're getting right into Euthyphro here, the work by Plato. This can be found on Blackboard. It's in your textbook too, or at least a selection of it is in your textbook. To do the setup here, I'm going to skim through some of this to get through the setup, and then I'm going to go into details of what's going on. So introductory-wise, I said it's the conversation between Euthyphro and Socrates. Socrates is waiting to go into the courtroom. Euthyphro comes up. Apparently, he's going to court too. What's new, Socrates? How you doing? Why aren't you out doing what you're usually doing? He's like, well, listen, I'm on trial. The Athenians do not call this a prosecution, but an indictment. I've been indicted. Oh, that's too bad. Someone's indicted you? Yeah. Who is it? And he's like, I don't know. Then at 3E, this is on page 4 in the reading on 3E, Socrates asks him, so, what are you doing here? What's your case? Are you defendant? Are you prosecutor? I'm the prosecutor. Oh, okay, you're prosecuting somebody at court, so you're bringing somebody up on charges. Who is it? One who I'm thought crazy to prosecute. Okay. Are they gonna escape from you? No, he's old. Who is it? My father. You're bringing your own father up on charges? What's the charge? Murder. Okay, that's become interesting. And Socrates says to him, look, bringing your own father up on charges of murder? That's a big deal. You must be very advanced in wisdom. By Zeus, Socrates, that's so. I'm very advanced in wisdom. And so, what happened here? Euthyphro's father had slaves that were apparently in a dispute. One killed the other, and then the slave that had killed another one in a fight, he was going to punish him, and so he tied him up and left him in a ditch for several days where he died in the ditch. So Euthyphro is prosecuting his father for the death of a slave that died by Euthyphro's father's willful neglect for killing another slave. So that's the short version of the story. Now let's get back into the conversation. Now, for doing this then, for prosecuting his father, Socrates actually commends him. Now keep in mind, Socrates is actually being charged with a crime of blasphemy in the city-state, the polis of Athens. So he's thinking I'm being charged with impiety. If you're being able to prosecute your own father, you know what piety is. You know this stuff. He says, this is quite commendable. Your knowledge of the divine, piety, and impiety, that's so accurate that when these things have happened, as you say, you have no fear of having acted impiously. Now, the word piety and being pious refer to notions of the right thing to do, correctness, but also with a sense of justice, dignity, and holiness too, all kind of wrapped up into one concept, piety. To which Euthyphro responds preposterously confidently, I should be of no use, Socrates, and Euthyphro would not be superior to the majority of men if I did not have accurate knowledge of all such things. So, notice what he just said here. Socrates commended him, you must know this piety stuff and impiety stuff. Since you're able to bring charges up against your own father, you must know what goodness is. To which Euthyphro responds, yeah, I wouldn't be better than other people if I didn't. So then what Socrates says to Euthyphro is, hey, I'm being brought up on charges of impiety and blasphemy. You're the expert on piety. You can be my expert witness. To which Euthyphro responds, I'm an expert. I can be an expert witness. Of course I would love to help you out with your court case. Then Socrates asks him at point blank, so tell me what it is then. What's piety? What's impiety? What's good? What's bad? What's right and what's wrong? What's justice? What's injustice? What's holiness and unholiness? Go ahead, tell me. You're the expert. And then Euthyphro says, okay. And listen, this is Euthyphro's first attempt here. One of several. He says, all right, piety is what I'm doing right now. To prosecute the wrongdoer, no matter who it is, whether it's your father, or whether they did it for murder, or robbery, or what have you. That's what piety is. Now, Socrates says to this, yeah, okay, yep, that what you're doing, that's good. But, there's other pious stuff, too, right? So, I didn't tell you to tell me one or two of them, but, you know, what makes piety pious? Like, what's the thing they all have in common? And it's kind of like he asked him, like, hey, Euthyphro, what is color? And he said, blue. Like, yes, that's an example of a color, but that's not what color is. Okay, so he says, tell me then, what's the form itself? The essence of what all the good things have in common, all the pious stuff there is. What is that? Oh, okay. Well, if that's what you wanted, that's what you're gonna get. Yep, that's what I wanted. And then he says this is attempt number 2. Well then, he says, what is dear to the gods is pious, and what is not is impious. Socrates here. Splendid, Euthyphro. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. A better answer to the question. Okay, there's just one problem. The gods don't like each other, right? Because here we are in polytheistic Greece, where certain gods are at war, like Zeus doesn't get along with his wife Hera, or Dionysus doesn't get along with Apollo, and sometimes the gods go to war. We can't say it's what the gods like, because they disagree on stuff. To which he says, right. And Euthyphro says, yeah, that's a good point. That's so. So Socrates presses him again in section 9. Now look, okay, come on, prove it. That what you're doing is the right thing to do. Like, show me, again, what's the form? And Euthyphro says, this is perhaps no light task, Socrates, though I could show you very clearly. Okay, you're obviously smarter than the jury's going to be. No, I'm going to show them clearly, if they'll just listen. Okay. Now remember, earlier on, he said he would not be better than other people if he didn't have adequate knowledge of such things, and he's kind of stumbling to satisfy Socrates' question here. So what he ends up doing is Euthyphro says at 9e, this is his third definition of what he thinks piety is. Okay, look, I would certainly say that the pious is what all the gods love, and the opposite, what all the gods hate, is the impious. There you go. So all the things, if you could take a Venn diagram and get all the things that the gods agree on, that's what piety is. All the gods. Problem solved. To which Socrates says, Let's take a look at that. Let's examine that. And Euthyphro reluctantly agrees. We must examine it, but I think this is now a fine statement. This is good. Like, we're good. Okay. Socrates says, we'll see whether it is. Consider this. Is the pious being loved by the gods because it is pious, or is it pious because it's being loved by the gods? And Euthyphro says here, what? I don't get it. All right. So listen to this. And he gives a lot of examples here, but I want to summarize this here. Basically, he says this, and we'll come back to this in a later video when we get to divine command as well. Like, which is it? Do the gods, if the gods all agree on something, do they agree with it because it's already pious? Like, there's already something called goodness out there, piety out there, and they just go, yep, that thing. Yep, we agree with that. And if that's the case, then the gods, it's not really what they say. They're already agreeing with something that already is pious. They don't make it so. But on the other hand, if it's what they say, or what they all affirm together that makes something then pious, if they all agreed all of a sudden that, no, murder is good now, we all agree that, then all of a sudden murder becomes good. And that doesn't seem right either. Okay, all the gods get together and they say, no, rape is good. And then that makes it good. No, Socrates wants to say, it seems like it's one of these scenarios. Either the gods make it up, in which case it's just completely made up, and that makes it piety, or you've got piety already out there, and the gods just appeal to something already out there, in which case there's something higher than them when it comes to what makes something good, good. And this is called the Euthyphro dilemma. Again, we'll come back to this when we're talking about divine command theory, because this is often a critique of so-called divine command theory. The view that basically what's right or what's good or what's pious is whatever the gods say, which is what Euthyphro just said here, granted in a polytheistic context. Or as Jay-Z once put it,
pious, for God loves pious. Socrates asks who's biased, do y'all seek? Off Plato. Squeak.
So there's that. And I just want to point out here in this next chunk of the conversation after that, you can see Euthyphro's answers become shorter and shorter. I do. Certainly. Necessarily. Yes. For no other reason. Apparently. He's doing the That thing, not feeling as confident. And so Euthyphro ends up saying here at 12e, okay, here's what I think. There's this big thing called justice, and part of justice is actually doing the right thing towards other human beings, and the rest of it, the main part, the part that's actually called piety, that's taking care of the gods, or it involves the care of the gods. To which Socrates says, yeah, but why do the gods need to be cared for? They're gods. Like, when you take care of horses, they need your help, but the gods don't really need help, so what are you doing when you do that? Like, dogs are benefited by, people taking care of them. But do gods get taken care of in the same kind of way? No. Okay. So Socrates ends up giving a lot of examples of things where the care of something or doing something doesn't mean that you actually benefit or make that kind of thing, and that's not really what taking care of the gods means. And then Socrates asks him, so, what do you think the gods actually do? Since, you're the expert on piety, remember, so what do they do? What's this whole process like? To which Euthyphro responds, I told you a short while ago, Socrates, that it's a considerable task to acquire any precise knowledge of these things, but to put it simply, so just notice his tone of voice already. He went from, I'm better than other people because I know this stuff too. Listen, this stuff's really difficult and I'm having to think about it really hard. So with people saying what they're supposed to at prayer and sacrifice, that's what piety is. It's doing the right religious actions, okay? And all the rest of it, anything else, is impiety. There you go. Socrates says, all right, thanks. Problem with that, though, is that would mean the pious is once again what's dear to the gods, which is what you said earlier. Well, we already said we know that's not the case, or do you not remember? I do. So you realize you're saying the same thing again that you said before that we already said is not true. So either we were wrong then when we agreed before, if we were right then, we're wrong now. So, you know what? Let's just start over from the beginning. Let's clear everything away that we've done so far. We'll start back at the beginning because, you got to help me out here. You're the wise one here, so tell me, my good Euthyphro, and tell me, what do you think it is? So let's forget all the mistakes we've made getting here, all right? You're the expert still, obviously. Help me out. What's piety? Don't hide it from me what you think it is. Go ahead and just say it. What is it? Some other time, Socrates, for I'm in a hurry now, and it's time for me to go. To which Socrates says there at the end, oh, that's a shame. What a thing to do, my friend. I really thought I was going to have your help as an expert witness. But I guess I'm going to have to go into court now. Bye. So, what's the point here? Well, here we had somebody claim to be an expert in morality. I know what goodness is. I know what the right thing to do is, because I'm doing the right thing now. And maybe they were, but Socrates wanted to point out that Euthyphro was overconfident in how much he was stating about his own expertise. And Euthyphro went to that court confidently, I'm doing the right thing prosecuting my father. And again, maybe he was, but he said, I know all this stuff. And so when Socrates pressed him on it, okay, what's goodness then? Well, it's what all the gods like. And yeah, but that's not an answer really to the question what goodness is. Like really tell me what it is. And when he was pressed on it, he actually couldn't give a very specific definition. And what this simply shows is that when we're dealing with ethics, a lot of times we feel this sense of righteousness or even indignation. That's the right thing to do. That's the wrong thing to do. But other than a sense of feeling or sentiment, how do we know that what we're doing is right? Are we overconfident? And that's Socrates' hesitancy in going and saying we know we're right, we absolutely think we're right. Maybe we're not. And all he said is I'm not saying Socrates is going, I'm not saying I'm the expert here. It's other people saying that they're the experts. And it turns out in other things that are written by Plato, we find out that was kind of Socrates' attitude all over Athens. He went to musicians and politicians and artists saying, you all are the experts, tell me about your expertise, and they couldn't really explain what they were doing or why what they were doing was right, much to their frustration. That's why the entire city-state of Athens is entertaining the idea of getting him prosecuted for blasphemy. And by the way, spoilers, not only is he convicted of blasphemy for asking these kinds of annoying questions, but he's executed for it. So here we just see an engagement with the question in the ancient world. How do we know what's right? How do we know what goodness is? How do we answer that question? And answering that question is not easy. And that's the point of this text. It's not easy, especially when we go into it confidently thinking that it is. It's not. Maybe there is a correct answer. The takeaway from this is not that nothing is true, nothing's real, nothing matters. That's not the takeaway from that. That is a perspective that sometimes people have when it comes to ethics. But that's not the point of this text. The point of this text is that's simply a hard question to get at. Don't come to it lightly. Maybe there is goodness that we can find, or maybe there's not. But saying that we know stuff when we don't, that's really the problem when it comes to moral investigation and conversations about morality. So in the next video, I will do a little bit of an epilogue here. We'll take a look at what happens to Socrates next time in Plato's Apology very briefly, but then I want to get on to looking at our next ancient exercise in ethics, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics.